Most people set up a fish tank, buy a filter, add some fish, and then spend the next 3 years doing weekly water changes, replacing dead fish every few months, and wondering why the whole thing feels like a maintenance job rather than a living system. That is not bad luck. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of what a healthy aquarium actually is, and almost nobody at the pet store is going to correct it because the business model depends on you buying replacement fish, water conditioners, algae treatments, and filter media on a cycle that never ends. Here is what serious hobbyists figure out eventually, usually after years of frustration. A correctly stocked tank does not have to be a maintenance machine. When the right combination of species fills the right biological roles, fish, invertebrates, and plants handle most of the work you are currently doing manually. Today, I am going to give you 9 specific fish and invertebrates that, when combined correctly, turn a standard aquarium into a self-regulating system that processes its own waste, controls its own algae, aerates its own substrate, and stays stable with far less intervention from you. Every species on this list is real, accessible, and fills a role that nothing else replicates. And at the end, I am going to tell you the one management mistake that collapses the entire system, even when every species is correct. The first is the Amano shrimp, scientific name Caridina multidentata, and it fills a soft algae and organic waste processing role that almost nothing else in the freshwater hobby can match. Larger and faster than dwarf Neocaridina species, Amano shrimp spend their entire day picking through plants, driftwood, and substrate, scraping off soft green algae and biofilm that fish leave behind. Unlike chemical treatments or manual removal, they target algae without introducing harmful substances or disturbing the natural balance of the aquarium. Their most valuable trait in the context of a self-sustaining system is one that most beginners overlook entirely. Every Amano shrimp you buy was caught in the wild because they cannot reproduce in fresh water. Their life cycle is amphidromous, meaning larvae require a temporary journey into salt water to develop. This means the colony never overpopulates, the bioload stays completely predictable, and you are never managing a population explosion. In a well-maintained, stable aquarium, the average Amano shrimp lifespan is 2 to 3 years, though under ideal conditions, many experienced hobbyists report their Amanos living 5 years or longer. A group of 8 to 10 in a planted 20 to 30 gallon aquarium processes soft algae and surface organic matter continuously without ever becoming a population management problem. The second is the Otocinclus catfish, genus Otocinclus, a small armored catfish from South American river systems that fills the plant surface cleaning role more precisely than almost any other species. They remain small, usually between 2 and 5.5 centimeters in length, and unlike many other catfish, they are active during the day and constantly graze on algae and biofilm. In the wild, they are found in large groups, often numbering dozens or even hundreds of fish together, and they graze on biofilm, diatom algae, and green film algae from flat surfaces, including glass, leaves, and wood. There is one critical fact about Otocinclus that most beginners learn the hard way. In most cases, fish die in home aquariums not because of water parameters, but because they were already starving before they left the store, and the home aquarium simply finished the job. They need a mature, established tank with genuine biofilm growth on surfaces before they are introduced. The minimum group size is 6 fish, but groups of 8 to 10 are significantly better, as in small groups, Otocinclus become stressed, hide constantly, and may fail to thrive. Get the conditions right, and they work plant surfaces and glass continuously, day in and day out, with minimal bioload contribution. The third is the Nerite snail, family Neritidae, and it is the most efficient hard surface algae grazer available to the freshwater hobbyist. Nerite snails are one of the few animals that will eat green spot algae, the calcified growth that is difficult to remove from plants and hardscape. They are efficient cleaners because of their special mouth structure, a rasp-like tongue called a radula that scrapes algae from any surface, including glass, rocks, and driftwood. They work quietly, and they do not disturb plants. They belong in a self-sustaining system, specifically because of their reproduction biology. Nerite snails cannot breed in fresh water because they require brackish water for larvae to survive. However, they will lay white egg capsules on any surface in fresh water. Those eggs will not hatch, and they do not disappear on their own. That is the one genuine drawback. The white eggs on glass and hardscape are cosmetically annoying to some hobbyists, but the trade-off is a powerful grazer that will never overrun the tank. Under ideal conditions, Nerite snails have been known to live for a decade. 4 to 6 in a 20 to 30 gallon aquarium handle hard surface algae maintenance almost entirely on their own. The fourth species is the Malaysian trumpet snail, scientific name Melanoides tuberculata, and this one surprises most people because it is often considered a pest rather than a deliberate addition. It is the most functionally important species on this entire list for long-term substrate health, and most hobbyists either overlook it or actively try to eliminate it. As Malaysian trumpet snails burrow through sand and gravel, they prevent the formation of anaerobic zones where dangerous hydrogen sulfide gas accumulates. Tanks with deep sand beds remain healthy for years thanks to their activity, while similar setups without them develop toxic gas pockets within months. At night, they emerge and work systematically across substrate, hardscape, glass, and plant surfaces, consuming algae, leftover food, and organic waste that would otherwise accumulate. A population explosion of Malaysian trumpet snails is not a snail problem, but a food problem. Their numbers are a direct visual representation of how much waste and leftover food is accumulating in the aquarium. Used deliberately in a controlled system with disciplined feeding, a small colony of 20 to 30 snails in a planted tank aerates the substrate continuously, processes buried detritus before it converts to ammonia, and does the invisible work that keeps the biological foundation of the tank stable. The fifth species is the Pygmy corydoras, scientific name Corydoras pygmaeus, and its role in the ecosystem is surface-level substrate sanitation and mid-water activity. In the wild, Corydoras pygmaeus are omnivores found in the Madeira River Basin in Brazil, feeding on small invertebrates, plant matter, and detritus, and they are one of the few corydoras species that frequently swim in the midwater region. They reach a maximum size of about 1 inch and are among the smallest catfish in the hobby. Get a 10-gallon or larger aquarium so you can keep a bigger school of at least 8 to 12 pygmies that will be less afraid to come out. Unlike the Malaysian trumpet snail, which processes buried substrate detritus, the Pygmy corydoras works the upper substrate layer and open water column, consuming surface detritus, microorganisms, and food particles that settle before they work their way deeper into the substrate. The combination of Malaysian trumpet snails working below the substrate surface and Pygmy corydoras working above it creates a two-layer detritus processing system that dramatically reduces the rate at which waste accumulates in the tank between maintenance events. The sixth species is the Endler's livebearer, scientific name Poecilia wingi, and it fills the surface and mid-water feeding layer while introducing the one biological dynamic that makes a system genuinely self-regulating in the long term. Endlers are very active swimmers that stay towards the top and middle sections of the aquarium, and an Endler's livebearer population can sustain itself once established. In their natural habitat in Venezuela, they feed primarily on algae, biofilm, small invertebrates, and zooplankton. Endlers reproduce every 20 to 30 days, and you would have some difficulty preventing them from breeding as long as there is at least one male and one female in the tank. Females give birth to 10 to 30 fry, depending on their size and age, and Endlers will eat their own fry, so dense planting improves survival rates. This self-regulation is the key. In a densely planted tank, a small percentage of fry survive to adulthood naturally, while the rest are consumed by other fish, creating a living, self-replenishing micro-prey population that supplements the diet of larger tank mates and reduces dependence on prepared food. The wild population of Endlers faces serious threats from pollution and urban development in Venezuela, making aquarium populations potentially vital for species preservation. The seventh is the Florida flagfish, scientific name Jordanella florida, a North American killifish that fills one of the most specific and hard to replace roles in the entire system. It is one of the few native fish from the United States available in the aquarium trade, and its mouths are perfectly shaped for ripping off hair algae, black-beard algae, and other fuzzy types of algae. Florida flagfish are one of the very few aquarium fish that genuinely and reliably eat black-beard algae, hair algae, and other nuisance algae, and a pair can clear a moderately infested 20-gallon tank within 2 to 3 weeks. There are important caveats the hobbyist forums make clear. The Florida flagfish has genuine fin-nipping tendencies, particularly the dominant male, and it can damage soft-stemmed plants if underfed. To reduce fighting among the fish, it is recommended to use lots of live aquatic plants to help block line of sight, and in their eagerness to eat algae flagfish can sometimes accidentally tear up more delicate plant leaves. Kept in a tank with robust, established plants, fed consistently so they are not hungry enough to attack plant tissue, and paired with fast-moving, short-finned tank mates, they are an extraordinary biological asset that covers filamentous algae types that no other species on this list addresses reliably. The eighth slot was going to be the Otocinclus we already discussed, but in its place, I want to include the mystery snail, scientific name Pomacea brigiesii. Mystery snails fill a mid-level scavenging and organic matter processing role that the other invertebrates do not fully cover. Mystery snails excel at scavenging for detritus and decomposing organic matter, consuming fallen leaves, uneaten fish food, and other debris that can lead to water quality issues. They also actively burrow into the substrate, promoting aeration and preventing compaction, which contributes to a healthier substrate environment and aids nutrient circulation, benefiting aquarium plants. Unlike the Malaysian trumpet snail, which is nocturnal and primarily works deep in the substrate, mystery snails are active during the day and visible, working the mid-level surfaces, the substrate top layer, and plant stems. Snail waste becomes a primary food source for secondary cleanup crew organisms like Amano shrimp and cherry shrimp, which love grazing on it, meaning even their waste output feeds another biological loop within the system. Mystery snails do breed in fresh water, unlike Nerites, so keep only one, or monitor egg masses laid above the waterline and remove them if population control is a priority. The ninth and final species is the Siamese algae eater, scientific name Otocinclus oblongus, which anchors the entire algae control layer of the system by covering the one algae type that every other species ignores. If you have watched our previous video on this species, you already know the full story of its disappearance from mainstream pet stores and how to identify the genuine fish versus the three common lookalikes sold under the same name. For the purposes of this ecosystem, its role is irreplaceable. No other species on this list eats blackbeard algae with the consistency and reliability of a genuine juvenile Siamese algae eater on a controlled feeding schedule. The Florida flagfish provides backup capacity for filamentous algae, the Amano shrimp handle soft green algae, the Nerite snails handle hard spot algae, the Otocinclus handle glass and leaf biofilm. But without the Siamese algae eater, the system remains biologically vulnerable to the one outbreak type that chemical treatments cannot safely resolve in a planted tank. Now, here is the mistake that stops this entire system from functioning, and it is the same mistake every time. Overfeeding. Every single grazing and scavenging organism on this list requires some level of food scarcity to remain motivated to perform its biological role. A Malaysian trumpet snail population explosion is a direct symptom of overfeeding your fish, and their numbers are a visual representation of how much waste and leftover food is in your aquarium. The same principle applies to every other organism in the system. Amano shrimp that are full-on prepared food stop grazing algae. Otocinclus that find sinking pellets readily available stop working plant surfaces. Flagfish with constant food access stop attacking algae. The feeding discipline that makes this system work is one light feeding per day, only what the fish can consume in 2 to 3 minutes, targeting mid-water and surface fish with prepared food, and allowing the bottom and surface organisms to graze between feeding events. That single discipline is the difference between a collection of interesting fish and a functioning biological ecosystem. The tank that results, with its substrate aerated continuously by Malaysian trumpet snails, its plant surfaces cleaned daily by Otocinclus and Amano shrimp, its hard algae managed by Nerite snails, its filamentous and beard algae consumed by flagfish and Siamese algae eaters, its waste processed by Pygmy corydoras and mystery snails, and its micro-prey population self-regulating through Endlers is not a theory. It is applied ecology in a glass box, and it has been running quietly in the tanks of serious hobbyists for decades while everyone else kept buying bottles. If this video changed how you think about stocking a tank, please give it a like and subscribe, because there is much more where this came from.